Role of stress in alcohol use and abuse. That is our topic for today. The objectives are to look at some of the causes of stress, examine alcohol, stress, abstinence, and how that impacts the body. And we're going to look at ways to cope with life stressors without alcohol. What causes stress? Well, general life stress is one of the causes of stress. Some examples of general life stressors include major changes in your life, like moving, starting a new job, getting a promotion, getting married, or it could be some things that are not as positive, like getting a divorce, illness, death in the family, problems at work. All of these things can cause significant stress in your life, or they could add to your life stress. And note, these things can be positive as well as negative. What else can cause stress? Catastrophic events. Studies have found that alcohol consumption increases within 12 months following a major disaster. And these disasters could be man-made or natural. Some studies have found that alcohol abuse increases after a catastrophic event. So think of something like September 11th, Hurricane Katrina, or something more recent, the disaster in Las Vegas, the mass shooting there, or the mass shooting in Orlando. Those things can be very stressful. You don't even have to have been a part of it. You might not even know anyone connected to it, but just knowing that it happened can bring about stress for some people. Something else, childhood trauma. Maltreatment during childhood, whether it's emotional, sexual, physical abuse, or neglect, all of these can have long-lasting effects, resulting in a significant percentage of all adult psychopathology. Abuse during childhood can increase the risk for alcohol use disorders in both adolescence and adulthood. Now, this is particularly true for children who grew up in alcoholic homes. So, without some sort of meaningful intervention to address this unresolved childhood trauma, it can be a major cause of stress in your life as well. Societal stressors. So catastrophic events can pull communities together, but societal stressors like racism, discrimination of a protected class or group, political divisions, these things can bring about a schism in society that can cause stress individually and even collectively. Determining how much a societal stressor may be linked to increased alcohol consumption can be difficult for researchers to determine because there's so many other risk factors involved within certain groups, like someone's drinking patterns, difference in alcohol metabolism rates. All of these things make it hard to fully assess. But what we do know is societal stressors can cause people to drink more. So let's look at how alcohol impacts stress. The body's hypothalamus, pituitary gland, and adrenal gland systems, they work really hard to maintain a delicate physiological balance But when alcohol is added to the mix, it puts the body at greater risk for harm. Alcohol causes higher amounts of cortisol to be released, altering the brain's chemistry and resetting what the body considers to be normal. And that normal is in air quotes. Alcohol shifts the hormonal balance and changes the way the body perceives stress, and it changes how it responds to stress. So if you remember something from another training we did on the role of hormones and stress, we know that cortisol is also known as the stress hormone. So if alcohol causes higher amounts of cortisol to be released in the brain, we know what that is doing to the body as relates to increased levels of stress. What else do we know? Studies have found that cortisol interacts with the brain's reward and pleasure systems, which can contribute to alcohol's reinforcing effects, forcing drinkers to consume greater amounts to achieve the same effect. Cortisol also can promote habit-based learning, increasing the risk of becoming a habitual drinker and increasing the risk of relapse. Additionally, researchers have linked cortisol to the development of psychiatric disorders such as depression. So we have to realize that when you add alcohol to the problem of stress, you are adding more problems, possibly, and impacting your mental health even more. Let's look at things about men and women. Studies have found men and women who report high levels of stress drink more. Stressed out men are 1.5 times more likely to binge drink than women are. And men are 2.5 times more likely to have alcohol use disorders. So knowing that, we know that men are a lot of times less likely to reach out for help to cope, but they use alcohol as a coping mechanism, unfortunately, to deal with stress more than women do. So the social drinker is what most people consider themselves to be. However, you could be a high risk social drinker if you have a propensity or predisposition to any of those things that cause great stress. So be mindful of that. If you have positive family history related to alcohol, if there's some type of prenatal alcohol exposure in your history, we know about the childhood adversities from the childhood trauma. Those are just some of the things that could put you at high risk. And once again, that high risk, that HPA trying to keep you at that normal tilt is not going to be able to do it because that cortisol is increasing. And what does that lead? Possibly to that habit forming use. That high risk social drinker can become alcohol dependent. If that happens, stress will only reinforce their use without having a meaningful intervention. When that intervention happens, though, they will most likely deal with withdrawal symptoms, which will make them want to do what? It will make them want to drink again to stop those horrible withdrawal symptoms. And for severe users, medical detox is always recommended as a safe way to deal with the withdrawals. Once we can get past those withdrawal symptoms and have a successful detox, the person is still at high risk for relapse. And dependent upon the length of use, the level of use, there is a concern about recovering not just from the physical harm that has been done to the body, but the mental impairment as well. But there is hope, because with prolonged abstinence and avoiding that yo-yo relapse, slow recovery, reduced cravings, reduced anxiety and stress can all be achieved. You've just got to stay with the program. And how do we do that? By learning some better ways to cope. Resilience is the ability to cope with stress. Someone who is resilient is able to adapt to psychological and physiological factors involved in the body's stress response. Research has found that people who have a positive, optimistic outlook and have good problem solving and coping skills tend to deal with stress effectively. However, people who don't handle stress well are therefore at risk of developing alcohol use disorders. So you've got to learn how to say, I will. Not just I can, but I will. And you've got to learn how to eliminate the I can't attitude. And in order to do that, you've got to do something else. You've got to change your stinking thinking. People who exhibit impulsivity, novelty seeking, negative emotions and anxieties, traits that are linked to increased risk for substance abuse disorders, they have difficulty dealing with stress. We know that. But the difficulty is mainly because of their negative self-talk and the irrational things they allow themselves to believe. If we look at this image, we see that our thoughts drive and impact our emotions and our behavior. So the saying is, so as you think, so are you. So if you are thinking negative, your emotions are going to be negative and your behaviors are going to be negative. Also, if you're allowing yourself to feel a negative feeling, that depression, that sadness, your thoughts are going to end up being sad, and your behavior and your responses are going to be isolating and also lean into that feeling. But the same thing goes with behaviors. If you allow yourself to isolate and shut down and not talk, then your thought lives are going to stay in that negative space and your emotions are going to stay depressed. These three things are connected, but the driving force 90% of the time is it starts with what you allow yourself to think and what you allow yourself to believe. So if we can change that stinking thinking, you can change your life, you can change your habits, and you can be much better off. So realize that that is the goal and that it is achievable. So as we close, if you find yourself struggling with the ability to be able to build your resilience on your own or to change your thought life on your own, then reach out to your employer paid EAP benefit. It is available for you and anyone in your household. No that this is a resource that you can use. If you have questions, if you have, whether it's about this training or something else, please email us at concern@bmhcc.org. Also, check out our new website, myconcerneap.com. This is an available resource with a lot of tools and links to help. This training will be uploaded to that site, and if you want to pass it on to someone else or want to listen to it again, that training and all of our other concern talks and other things are available for you. If you would like to have a training for your company, there's a training request form that you can fill out right there on the website as well. It's still in development. We're still adding a few more bells and whistles, but please check it out. No issue is too big or too small, and everything is always confidential and always free when you are talking with your concerned counselor. It's available for you and anyone in your household, so there's no need to struggle. Go ahead and tap into the free help that is available. Thank you so much for tuning in to this Concern Talk, and please join us again.